People don't realize they're losing everything until the only thing left is pain. In a world where glamour conceals the truth, Emily walked into that night with trust and walked out with a shattered heart. Lover slaps pregnant wife, but what happens next is karma in action. The slap came out of nowhere, loud, sharp, cruel. Emily didn't even have time to blink. 1 second, she was smiling politely for the cameras, her hand resting on her 7-month belly. The next, her face was stinging, her ears ringing, and every single person in the Millionaire Gala had gone silent. Vanessa's hand still hovered in the air, her crimson nails gleaming under the chandelier lights. People gasped, some covered their mouths, others quickly raised their phones. But no one stepped in, not a single soul. And Vanessa's voice was calm, clear, and coated in poison. "I told you to stay out of our lives. Landon doesn't love you. He never did. You were just convenient," she sneered, her lips curling into a fake smile. As she looked around, she declared, "Let the world know I'm the real woman beside Landon now." Emily couldn't breathe. Her hands shook. Her baby kicked inside her, as if reacting to the violence outside. Vanessa's words weren't just an insult. They were a knife, one that cut through 8 years of marriage, through every promise. Every moment Emily thought was real. She looked around at the sea of wealthy strangers, men in tuxedos, women in diamonds, all staring, some whispering, others smirking, like this was the night's entertainment. And Landon, he just stood there, leaning by the bar, drink in hand, calm as ever, watching her fall apart. Like it didn't matter. Like she didn't matter. Emily tried to hold herself up, her hands pressed against her stomach like a shield. "Landon," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Tell them it's not true. Tell her to stop." But Landon didn't even blink. He took a sip of his whiskey and turned to Vanessa. "You didn't have to hit her," he said, as if they were discussing spilled wine, not a slap in front of the entire elite press. Then he looked at Emily. No love, no guilt, just boredom. "You shouldn't have come tonight." Those 5 words hit harder than the slap. Her knees weakened. Someone nearby let out a laugh, another whispered, "That's the pregnant wife, right?" The shame flooded her faster than the tears. Her whole body trembled, but she wouldn't cry. Not here, not in front of them. But deep inside, something cracked, something that would never be fixed again. As Vanessa stepped closer, her heels clicking against marble, her voice dropped to a whisper. "You married him for money, sweetheart, but you forgot the rich always come back to their own kind." Emily blinked. Through the blur of lights and noise, the cameras were still flashing. The humiliation wasn't just in her heart anymore. It was now public property. Her pain had gone viral in real time. She could hear one reporter mutter, "This will be front-page gold by morning." She wanted to scream, not because of the slap, not even because of Vanessa, but because deep down she had seen the signs. The late nights, the secret texts, the sudden change in Landon's touch, the way he made her feel invisible in a room full of people. But she buried it all because she loved him, because she thought carrying his child would bring them closer, because she believed in him. Now all of that was dust. Her hands wrapped around her belly protectively. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, as if reminding her she wasn't alone, that this wasn't the end. Not yet. Landon turned his back on her without a second glance. Just like that, he walked away, with Vanessa on his arm, not even pretending to care about the crowd, the scandal, or his pregnant wife, standing alone in designer heels and tears. The ballroom felt colder. The music never resumed. People slowly returned to their champagne and gossip, but the mood had changed. Emily wasn't just a guest anymore. She was the night's scandal, the fallen queen, the woman too blind to see her own crown being stolen. She tried to move, but her legs were heavy. Her heart was heavier. Someone brushed past her, whispering, "She should have known better." Another voice replied, "You can't trust gold diggers. They always lose." But they didn't know her. They didn't know the sacrifices, the silence. They didn't see her at doctor visits alone, or the way she decorated the nursery by herself while Landon was busy building his empire on lies. For a moment, Emily's knees buckled, and she had to grab the edge of a nearby table to keep from collapsing. Her vision blurred, her breath shallow with the weight of shame and heartbreak. She felt the world tilt around her, the judgment, the humiliation pressing down like a physical force. But somewhere inside, beyond the terror and exhaustion, a small, stubborn spark refused to die. They didn't know her, but they would, because this wasn't her ending. This was her beginning, and they had no idea what she was about to do next. The press had torn into her. Flashing cameras, cruel whispers, and scandalous headlines. Emily was drowning in it all, 7 months pregnant, humiliated in front of the world. She felt a wave of cold anger that threatened to consume her. Vanessa's slap still burned on her cheek, but it wasn't the sting that kept her up at night. It was the realization that everything she had believed in had been a lie. The world saw the humiliation, but Emily knew she couldn't just sit back and let them destroy her. She hired a private investigator, someone who would uncover the truth. She needed to regain control. She would find out everything, expose them, and make them regret this betrayal before it consumed her and her child. A new war had begun, and she wasn't going to lose. As she lay in bed, unable to sleep, memories flooded her mind, memories she had ignored, silenced by the comforting lie of love. The mansion, once a place of joy, now felt like a prison. Locked doors, hushed conversations. Landon's eyes darting away when she asked questions, the sudden silences when she entered rooms. She thought it was just stress, a busy life, but now she saw it clearly. She had been too trusting. The signs were always there, hidden in the quiet moments. He wasn't just distant. He was hiding something, someone. She could hear the whispers now. They had always been there, just under the surface. But she was awake now, and no amount of diamond-studded distractions could keep her from uncovering the truth. The weight of betrayal crushed her chest as Emily stood in front of the grand mirrors in their mansion. She was torn between two choices: run far away, protect her unborn child, and start a new life somewhere far from the drama, or stay and fight, take down the man who destroyed her and the woman who had no place in her life. The reflection staring back at her wasn't just a broken woman. It was a warrior being born from the ashes. Every muscle in her body screamed to run. But somewhere deeper, a fire ignited, a quiet voice that whispered, "You deserve to fight. You deserve to win." She clutched her belly, feeling the faint kick of her child, and knew this battle wasn't just for her. It was for the tiny life depending on her strength. What was the right choice? Should she run and protect herself from the emotional destruction that awaited? Or should she confront the monsters that lived within her marriage and tear them apart? Every instinct told her to run, but she knew deep down that leaving would mean living in fear. No, Emily thought. She was done running. She would make them pay. The private investigator's report confirmed what Emily had feared. Vanessa wasn't just an ex-girlfriend. She was still Landon's mistress. The affair had never ended and ran much deeper than Emily had imagined. Vanessa was woven into their lives, into Landon's business, his world. Emily had been nothing more than a trophy, an ornament to maintain his reputation. She felt her blood boil as the evidence was laid bare before her eyes. Her anger grew like a storm inside her. She was the fool, the naive woman who had been fed lies, but that was about to change. Landon and Vanessa had made their move, and now it was Emily's turn to take control. The investigation dug deeper, revealing a chilling truth. Her signature had been forged to launder millions unwittingly. She had been dragged into Landon's web of corruption. The weight of this revelation hit her like a punch to the gut. Everything she thought she knew about her life, her marriage, was a lie. A suffocating sense of violation crept over her, heavier than anything she had ever known. She hadn't just lost her marriage, she had lost her dignity, her name, her very identity. Tears blurred her vision, not from weakness, but from an outrage so fierce it felt like it would tear her apart. The idea that her name had been used for illegal dealings made her feel sullied. She was trapped, a pawn in his game, and now she was legally tied to his crimes. But she wasn't going to let him get away with it. She would fight back, expose him for everything he was, and tear his empire down from the inside out. Emily wasn't just an unwilling accomplice. She had been Landon's greatest asset. Her beauty, her status. A glamorous wife who added legitimacy to his empire, but never a true partner. Landon had used her to lure in investors, to seal deals, to build a network that only benefited himself. As the layers of deceit peeled away, Emily saw the cold truth. She had been nothing more than a trophy, a symbol of his success. The realization made her sick to her stomach. But now she was going to turn the tables. If Landon wanted her to be his tool, then she would become the one thing he could never control, his undoing. The fall from grace was swift and unforgiving. Landon moved fast, stripping Emily of everything she once held dear. Accounts frozen, properties blocked, her own home taken from her. Emily was left with nothing and nowhere to go. Worse still, Landon did it all with the cold precision of a man without a heart. He had erased her from his life as if she had never existed. But Emily wasn't going to take this lying down. She would rebuild, starting from the ground up, and take back everything he had stolen from her. The world would know her story. They would see the truth of who Landon Voss really was. The penthouse that once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a gilded cage. Luxury no longer offered comfort. It suffocated her. She was trapped in a life she didn't choose, her body aching with the stress of it all. The baby kicked relentlessly, as if even the child sensed the turmoil. Emily's strength was fading, but her will to survive was growing stronger. She couldn't let herself fall apart. Not now. Not when there was so much at stake. She had to keep going. She had to fight for herself and for the child growing inside her. Landon was not a man to lose quietly. As she lay low, recovering from the public scandal, he began his campaign to destroy her in the media. He spun the narrative that she was unstable, a woman who couldn't handle the pressures of their life. The press lapped it up, turning on her in a heartbeat. While she hid in the shadows, nursing her wounds, he painted her as the villain. But Emily wasn't going to let him control the narrative. She would fight back, not just for herself, but for the truth. And she would make sure the world saw who Landon really was. As she sat in the darkened penthouse, Emily remembered the early days of her relationship with Landon. He had always been charming, a master of manipulation, but what she hadn't seen then was the subtle isolation he was weaving around her. Friends, family, even her own independence. One by one, they had been stripped away. Landon had always been controlling, but she hadn't recognized the subtle ways he kept her to himself. He told her it was for their future, for their love, but in reality, it was about control. Emily couldn't leave the bubble he created for her. She was cut off from everyone who mattered, made to feel as though only he could offer her the world. At first, it seemed like love, but now she saw it clearly for what it was. Possession. Every moment of trust, every smile, every I love you was just another thread in his web. And now, when she needed help the most, she had no one. Landon had planned this all along. Isolation was his way of making sure she never had the strength to walk away. Emily had agreed to an exclusive interview, hoping to finally share her side of the story. But as the cameras rolled and the questions started, it became clear that someone had sabotaged her. The footage was manipulated, her words twisted, and the interview was used to further paint her as a mentally unstable woman. They had done it again. Landon, Vanessa, and the media. They had controlled the narrative, silencing her before she could speak her truth. The betrayal cut deeper than she had imagined. As the broadcast aired and the headlines began to spin out of control, Emily sat frozen in front of the TV, a gnawing doubt creeping into her heart. For a fleeting, painful moment, she wondered if maybe they were right. Had she been foolish? Had she been blind to a truth everyone else could see? The questions clawed at her, feeding the old insecurities Landon had planted long ago. But as the tears blurred her vision, she clenched her fists and forced herself to remember. She wasn't crazy, she was betrayed. She wasn't unstable, she was wounded, and she would not let their lies define her. Yet, as the interview ended and the cameras shut off, Emily felt a strange sense of calm. They might have silenced her in that moment, but that they hadn't broken her. She still had the truth. She still had the power to expose them. The world might not know her side of the story yet, but Emily wasn't going to let this defeat her. It was just another round in the game, and this time she would win. The chase was relentless. Emily couldn't escape the paparazzi. Every time she stepped outside, they were there. Cameras flashing, pushing her further into the madness. It was as though the world was hunting her, waiting for her to crack under the pressure. She was already on edge, her pregnancy taking its toll, her body straining to carry the weight of the lies and betrayal. The paparazzi's pursuit almost led her to an early labor, her heart racing, her breath shallow. She stumbled, barely catching herself as they closed in. But in that moment, it wasn't just the cameras that were threatening her. It was the constant barrage of lies, the weight of the public humiliation, and the fact that she was carrying a child that would be marked by all of this. She couldn't believe it. Landon had turned her life into a public spectacle. But no matter how hard they tried to push her down, she wasn't going to give in. She would fight, no matter what it cost her. The phone call came on a rainy afternoon, and it felt like the universe was handing her a lifeline. A lawyer, unknown to her, had been trying to get in touch for days. When they finally spoke, the man revealed that there was something she needed to know, something that could change everything. Landon had an unfiled will, a legal document that could shift the entire balance of power in this war. Emily's heart raced as she listened to the lawyer's words. This wasn't just any will. It was a backup plan, hidden away, never meant to see the light of day. The lawyer couldn't reveal the exact details yet, but he assured her that the will contained something critical. Emily felt a spark of hope, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in months. Landon thought he had everything wrapped up, that he had crushed her, but she wasn't done. She had a chance to take back everything. The path ahead was still dark, but for the first time in a long while, Emily saw a glimmer of light. The safe was buried deep in Landon's office, a fortress that seemed impenetrable. But Emily was beyond caring about the risks now. She had to know the truth, no matter what. With the help of the lawyer, she obtained the necessary tools and information. It was a dangerous move, breaking into $1 million empire, putting her own safety at risk, but Emily was desperate. The night was her ally as she crept through the mansion, her heart hammering in her chest. She had come this far. She couldn't turn back now. Her fingers trembled as she cracked the code to the safe, the sound of the dial turning too loud in the silence. The moment the door opened, she felt a rush of adrenaline. There it was, the original will, along with a flash drive marked with a warning. Emily didn't need to look twice to know. This was her key to revenge. This was the moment that would change everything. With the will and the flash drive in her hands, she felt an overwhelming sense of power. The empire Landon had built was about to come crashing down. The flash drive revealed the tape that would be the final blow. It showed him and Vanessa laughing as they discussed how they had trained Emily, manipulated her every move, and used her to further their own goals. They mocked her, calling her naive and blind to the truth. They thought they had won, but the footage was damning proof of everything she had feared. Landon had been using her emotionally, all while pretending to be the perfect husband. Vanessa, his partner in crime, was just as complicit. Watching the tape made Emily's blood boil. She was no longer the naive woman who had been manipulated. She was a force to be reckoned with, and this tape was her weapon. Filing the will and releasing the footage would destroy them both. Their wealth, their reputation, their future. It would all crumble under the weight of the truth. Emily had no illusions. Landon would fight back, but this time he wouldn't have control. She had the leverage now. And the world would finally see the real Landon Voss. But it wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming her life and ensuring no one else would ever be destroyed by his lies again. The first strike was only the beginning. Just when Emily thought she had seen it all, the private investigator returned with a revelation that shook her to her core. Vanessa wasn't just a mistress. She was Landon's secret half-sister from a long-forgotten affair. The truth was darker than Emily could have imagined. Their relationship wasn't just immoral, it was criminal. Emily's mind raced as the implications her trust, her memories, even the love she thought she shared with Landon, now felt irreparably tainted. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was incest. The empire Landon had built was rooted not only in corruption but in unspeakable darkness. The world wouldn't just see him as a cheating husband, they would see him for the monster he truly was. Emily felt a deep, nauseating wave of rage wash over her. Everything she had endured seemed small compared to this. But now, armed with the truth, she had the power to bring it all crashing down. Landon's manipulation went far beyond what Emily could have ever imagined. It wasn't just her heart he had broken. It was the very law. The truth was darker, more twisted than any of the lies he had spun. And now Emily had the power to expose it. All the world would know the truth, and she would make sure that no one could ignore it. Emily sat alone, the weight of everything crashing down on her. Revenge wasn't enough anymore. Exposing Landon and Vanessa wasn't just about hurting them. It was about saving herself and her child. She had been living in a world of lies and deception, but now she had the power to bring it all to an end. Landon and Vanessa's empire would crumble, and the world would see them for what they truly were. But Emily didn't just want revenge. She wanted justice. She wanted to make sure no one else fell victim to the darkness that had consumed her life. It was time to expose the truth, to stand tall, and to ensure that the consequences of their actions would be felt by everyone. They had ruined her life, but now she would take back control. It wasn't just about vengeance. It was about exposing the evil that had lived in the shadows for too long. The grand ballroom glittered in gold and velvet, the chandeliers sparkling like stars. The elite of the city had gathered, oblivious to the storm that was about to hit them. The air was thick with champagne, laughter, and the smell of expensive perfume. But behind the glamour, Emily stood in the center of the room, her eyes cold and determined. She had set the perfect trap, and it was now time to watch it snap shut. This wasn't just an art showcase. This was her reckoning. Every detail had been carefully planned. The press was in the front row. The rich and powerful gathered around her like moths to a flame. They had no idea they were about to witness the biggest scandal of the year. As the soft music played, Emily's lips curved into a smile, but there was nothing sweet about it. This was the calm before the storm. Landon would be here soon, his arrogance blinding him to the fact that Emily had already won. This night, she would expose him. The lies, the betrayal, the manipulation. It was all about to be revealed, and it would be her hand that delivered the blow. As she waited, her fingers brushed over the cool metal of the projector remote hidden in her pocket. It felt heavy, but not in the way it should. It was the weight of justice. She had spent months preparing for this moment, setting the stage for the ultimate betrayal. When the crowd buzzed in anticipation, Emily knew the time had come. She gave one last glance at the entrance, her breath catching as the door swung open. Landon had arrived. The game was on. The door opened and Landon stepped into the room, his confidence oozing from every inch of him. Dressed in a tailored suit, he walked with a swagger that only the truly powerful had. His hand rested possessively on Vanessa's waist as they entered the room together, her arm linked with his. She was draped in a dress that shimmered as if to match Landon's overblown sense of self-importance. Landon's eyes scanned the crowd, a smug smile curling his lips. He was untouchable. His empire was built on lies, his actions protected by money and influence. But Emily knew the truth, and soon everyone else would. He was about to realize that no amount of wealth or power could save him from what was coming. Emily stood across the room, her heart pounding as she watched him approach. Landon hadn't changed. He still believed that his charm, his reputation, could keep him safe. But he had underestimated her. The trap was set, and he was walking right into it. The guests greeted him with forced smiles, all of them eager to rub elbows with the man they thought was untouchable. And as Landon took a glass of champagne, he felt nothing but victory. Little did he know his world was about to come crashing down. The music slowed and all eyes turned toward the entrance as Emily stepped into the room. She was glowing, 7 months pregnant, but it wasn't the pregnancy that commanded attention. It was her presence. Her back was straight, her head held high, a look of unwavering determination in her eyes. The room fell silent as her heels clicked against the marble floor. Landon's gaze locked with hers, and for the first time in years, there was no smile on his face. She wasn't the fragile, broken woman he had left behind. This Emily was someone else entirely. She was the woman who had been pushed to her breaking point and had come out stronger, smarter, and ready for revenge. Emily's expression was unreadable, her face a perfect mask of calm, but inside her emotions were a raging storm. She wanted to scream, to lash out at him, but she knew better. The game had changed, and she was in control now. Every step she took toward him was a step toward victory. A victory she had earned after years of being deceived and manipulated. Landon's heart skipped a beat as Emily approached, his smug confidence beginning to crack. This wasn't the woman he thought he had broken. This was someone far more dangerous. Without warning, the lights in the room flickered, and the chatter of the guests fell into hushed confusion. The music stopped. The room plunged into darkness, and a gasp spread through the crowd. Then the screen at the back of the gallery flickered to life, casting a cold blue light over the room. The crowd fell silent as the image of Landon and Vanessa appeared. The footage began to play, and the room was filled with the sound of Landon's voice. His words cut through the silence like a knife. "This is how I trained her, Vanessa. Like a dog, she doesn't know anything else. I've made her believe I love her. She's been so obedient, so pathetic, she'll do whatever I tell her." The gasps from the crowd were audible, the shock and disbelief washing over every face. People turned toward Landon, who stood frozen, his face draining of color. Vanessa's hand trembled in his, but she refused to let go even as she watched the footage of them mocking Emily, laughing at her pain and her loyalty. The camera zoomed in on their faces, showing the cruelty and manipulation they had hidden for so long. Every word, every laugh was now exposed. The woman they had broken was standing in front of them, and the truth was being laid bare for everyone to see. The room went deathly quiet, and Landon's hands clenched into fists. He tried to speak, to defend himself, but nothing came out. The footage continued, each word more damning than the last. Emily watched as Landon's smirk appeared on the screen, mocking her every move, belittling her like she was nothing more than a tool in his life. His voice rang out, colder than she had ever heard it. "She's like a dog, Vanessa. You give her a command and she follows. She's obedient, like I trained her. You should see the way she looks at me. It's pathetic, but she's so useful." The crowd gasped, and the cameras flashed. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, but she didn't flinch. She had known this moment would come. This was the moment when the world would see Landon for who he really was. The words were harsh, unforgiving, but they were also the truth. The truth that she had lived with for far too long. She had been nothing more than a puppet in Landon's game, manipulated into believing she was loved, when in reality she was just a pawn. Landon's face twisted with rage as he realized what was happening. The man who had thought he could control everything was now exposed for the world to see. Emily's revenge had begun. The footage cut abruptly, and a new image appeared on the screen, a legal document. The room went silent as the camera zoomed in on the will that Landon had tried so desperately to keep hidden. Emily watched as the document flashed across the screen, the truth shining bright. The will was clear. Landon's entire empire was in jeopardy. The business, the fortune, the life he had built, everything was suddenly hanging by a thread, and it was all because she had found it. The will had been tucked away, never meant to see the light of day, but now it was out in the open, and the consequences were immediate. Landon's face turned white, his body stiffening as he realized the power that Emily held. This wasn't just about public humiliation anymore. This was about his downfall. The will was a ticking time bomb, and she had set the fuse. Landon lunged forward, his face contorted with rage. "You think you've won, Emily? You're nothing. You'll never take me down." His voice cracked, but he still tried to hold on to his arrogance. Emily stood her ground, unfazed by his outburst. "You've lost, Landon. You just don't know it yet." But Landon wasn't done. With a furious growl, he took a step toward her, his hand reaching out as if he could silence her. "I'll make you regret this. You and your child will be nothing. You'll never take me down," he spat. Emily's expression remained calm, but her eyes burned with a fire that couldn't be extinguished. "You're already finished." The room buzzed with tension as Landon's last threat hung in the air, but no one believed him anymore. He was powerless, his empire crumbling before his very eyes. Emily didn't flinch. Instead, she calmly pulled a thick envelope from her bag. The crowd watched in stunned silence as she held up the custody agreement, the one Landon never expected her to find. "Sign this, Landon, or lose everything," Emily said coldly, her voice slicing through the tension in the room. Landon's face twisted in disbelief. "You can't do this. That's my child." Emily's lips curled into a smile. "Not anymore. This agreement strips you of everything. Power, legacy, and control. All of it. It's done." The silence in the room was deafening. Landon's eyes flicked to Vanessa, who stood frozen, staring at the document in Emily's hand. His world was collapsing around him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. She didn't need a tape anymore. She held the final weapon in her hand. Emily's voice rang out, cutting through the chaos in the room. "You'll never use our child the way you used me, Landon. You lost that right the moment you betrayed me." Her words were simple, but they were sharp, like a sword slicing through the air. Landon's face went pale, the blood draining from his features as he realized what she meant. His empire, his future, his control over her, they were all gone. There was nothing left, no power, no leverage. He had no choice but to stand there, broken, as the woman he thought he had destroyed crushed him completely. The room was thick with tension, the eyes of the elite glued to the scene unfolding before them. Vanessa, trembling beside Landon, could no longer hold her composure. Her gaze darted between him and the screen, the weight of everything that had just been exposed crashing down on her. Her voice was raw with rage as she turned toward Landon, her lips trembling with fury. You used me, Landon. You promised me everything, and this is how you repay me?" With a scream of betrayal, Vanessa slapped Landon across the face, the sound echoing through the room like a gunshot. The crowd gasped as her hand stung his cheek. The very man who had once used her for his gain, now standing before her as a shell of the powerful figure he once was. Landon's head snapped to the side, his expression one of shock and disbelief. But Vanessa didn't care. The man who had destroyed her had no more power over her, and her world was crumbling too. The relationship, the trust, the lies, they all imploded in that one moment. As the chaos in the room reached its peak, the door to the gallery burst open, and 2 police officers stormed in, their uniforms sharp and intimidating. The crowd parted, whispers filling the air as the officers walked toward Landon. Without hesitation, they placed him under arrest, their voices steady and firm. "Landon Blackwood, you are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to defraud the public." The room erupted into a frenzy, the flashes of cameras capturing every moment. Landon stood frozen, his empire crumbling to dust around him as the law dragged him away, his face contorted in disbelief. Vanessa's face twisted in agony as she stumbled backward, her hands clutching at her chest. The cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing her every movement as she collapsed onto the marble steps. The world was watching, and it felt like every breath she took was suffocating her. Vanessa gasped, her breathing shallow, and then her eyes widened in terror. Her body shook, her knees giving way beneath her as her head spun. Vanessa had taken something to escape, to numb the pain, but it was too much. The poison in her system was too strong. Her body trembled uncontrollably as she slid down the steps, her once perfect appearance now shattered. The crowd moved in, some in horror, others with pity. Vanessa's guilt had poisoned her, and now it was taking its toll. She couldn't run from the consequences of her actions, not anymore. The flashbulbs continued to pop, each one capturing the fall of the woman who had once stood proudly beside Landon. Her collapse was as public as her betrayal. As the world around her burned, Emily stood at the center of it all, her face calm yet full of strength. The police took Landon away, his cries and protests fading into the distance. The crowd began to dissipate, but Emily remained unmoved. Then a sharp pain cut through her, sending her body into shock. The contractions had started. A deep breath, a long exhale, and Emily closed her eyes. The time had come. Her world had been torn apart by betrayal, but now, in the middle of the chaos, she was about to bring a new life into it. The pain was real, but so was the hope. She gritted her teeth, pushing through the agony. The crowd began to murmur as Emily's body bent in the first stages of labor. Every nerve in her body screamed in pain, but deep inside, an unshakable resolve took root. This was her moment, to endure, to fight through the agony and claim the future she and her daughter deserved. She whispered silent promises to hope as each wave of contraction tore through her. "I will protect you. I will never let you be broken the way I was." It wasn't just her body giving birth. It was her spirit, raw and powerful, breaking free from years of betrayal and pain. This was her redemption. The birth of her child marked the beginning of something new, a new life, a new future. And for the first time in years, Emily felt the weight of the world lift from her shoulders. Emily's breath hitched as another wave of pain hit her, and she doubled over, her hand gripping the edge of the table for support. Her heart raced, her eyes wide with determination. The world had come crashing down around her, but in this moment, Emily wasn't broken. She wasn't defeated. She was about to bring new life into the world, a life that would rise from the ashes of everything she had lost. "It's time," Emily whispered through clenched teeth. The room fell silent, the tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. The next chapter was about to begin, and no one knew what it would hold. But one thing was certain. This was only the beginning of Emily's story. The pain of betrayal was still fresh. But as Emily held her daughter, everything else faded into the background. The world outside, still full of whispers and cameras, seemed distant as she cradled the tiny life in her arms. Hope. She had named her Hope. Born in the chaos of betrayal, a symbol of everything Emily had lost and everything she now had to fight for. The nurses buzzed around her, but her focus never wavered from the tiny face looking up at her with wide, trusting eyes. This was her future now. Not the empire she once shared with Landon, not the glamorous life that had come crumbling down with the weight of his lies. Hope was her new beginning, her new strength. The life she would build was no longer one of luxury and deceit. It would be one of love, resilience, and justice. As she looked down at her daughter, Emily knew one thing for sure. She would protect this little girl with everything she had. Nothing would ever break her again. This child, born in the ashes of betrayal, would be the light that led her out of the darkness. And from this moment forward, she would fight. For hope, for herself, and for every woman whose voice had been silenced by a man's power. The penthouse was quiet now, a stark contrast to the storm that had raged just days before. From the floor-to-ceiling windows, Emily watched as the city sprawled beneath her, its lights twinkling like the stars she had once dreamed of. But everything felt different now. The view had once represented a life of luxury and power, but now it was just a reminder of the wreckage she had risen from. She sat in the plush armchair, holding Hope close to her chest, feeling the warmth of the tiny body in her arms. Her body still ached from the trauma of childbirth, both physical and emotional. She had lost so much: her marriage, her trust, her place in a world that had once seemed so perfect. But now, in this space away from the chaos, Emily was starting to heal. Fully. She had been through the worst. She had seen the darkest sides of love, betrayal, and revenge. But with Hope by her side, everything had changed. Each moment. She spent time with her daughter, each moment feeling like a step forward into a new world, one she would build from the ground up, one where she had the power to define her own future. Emily's journey to healing wasn't gentle. There were no soft embraces or peaceful moments of reflection. Every day was a battle. The physical pain of childbirth was nothing compared to the emotional toll she had endured, but every step she took forward was a victory in itself. She woke up each day with one thing in mind: survival. She spent sleepless nights holding Hope, trying to reconcile the woman she had been with, the woman she was becoming. Some nights, when the weight of everything felt too heavy, Emily would find herself sitting by the window, Hope cradled in her arms, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. A hollow ache gnawed at her. The gnawing shadows of loneliness, of fear, of doubt. Was she enough? Could she protect this innocent soul from a world that had been so cruel to her? The darkness whispered cruel doubts into her ears. But every time she would look down at Hope's tiny sleeping face and find the courage to wipe away the tears and keep moving forward. The world watched as she fought back from the wreckage, news outlets following her every move, their headlines a mix of sympathy and judgment. But none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was her resolve, her will to rebuild. She wasn't just recovering, she was reclaiming everything: her dignity, her strength, and her future. The road ahead wasn't easy, but it was hers to walk. And with each passing day, Emily grew stronger, more determined to rise from the ashes to prove that she was more than a victim of her circumstances. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Emily sat in the front row, her eyes unwavering as Landon's lawyer presented their case. He was trying to paint her as the villain, twisting the narrative to make it seem like she was the one who had destroyed their family, their empire. But Emily knew the truth, and soon the world would know it too. As the witnesses took the stand, each one brought the truth to light, stripping Landon of the empire he had so carefully built on lies. The press, who had once adored him, now watched in shock as the man they had praised for years was slowly brought down. Each new revelation was a punch to the gut, each testimony another nail in the coffin of his legacy. And then it was her turn. Emily stood, her voice steady but powerful, as she told the world what Landon had done to her, to their family, to their empire. She was no longer the woman he had manipulated. She was no longer the woman who had suffered in silence. This was her time, and she would make sure the world knew the truth. The courtroom was her stage, and karma was the judge. Landon's crimes were unraveling before the eyes of everyone who had once stood by him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it now. Vanessa's fall was swift, but unlike Landon's loud public disgrace, hers was silent and ugly. Once the glamorous mistress, the woman who had thought she could take Emily's place, Vanessa now found herself alone in the shadows. Her wealth and status were gone, stripped away as the truth about her role in the betrayal came to light. Landon had promised her the world, but he had used her too. And now she was left with nothing but the wreckage of her own ambition. She disappeared from the public eye, hiding from the world. The elite who had once courted her now turned their backs, and Vanessa was left to face the consequences of her actions. The woman who had once thought she could steal everything from Emily had ended up with nothing. Her name was forgotten, her power stripped away. Vanessa's rise had been fast, but her fall was even faster. She had tried to take everything from Emily, but in the end, it was Vanessa who lost it all. The Blackwood name had once been a symbol of power, wealth, and control, but now Emily was burying it. She had no use for the legacy Landon had tried to build on deceit and betrayal. The Blackwood Empire would die with him, and from its ashes, Emily would rise. She rebranded everything, changing the name, the image, the vision. The empire that had once been lies would now be built on truth and strength. It wasn't just a business. It was a symbol of her survival, her determination to overcome everything Landon had thrown at her. And so she named it after her daughter, Hope. The Blackwood Empire was no more, replaced by something stronger, something that couldn't be touched or tarnished by the lies of the past. Hope would be the new face of everything. Emily had fought for the new legacy, born from the ashes of everything that had tried to break her. The journalist who had once risked everything to tell Emily's story returned, but this time it wasn't the same. He had seen the truth in Emily's fight, had watched her rise from the ashes, and now he was part of her world in a way that was different. He had been the one to expose Landon's lies, but now it was Emily who had the power. The bond between them had shifted. What had once been an interview turned into something deeper. It wasn't about a story anymore. It was about truth, redemption, and the connection they had formed through their shared struggle. They spent quiet nights talking about the future, about building something that mattered. Emily no longer saw him as just a journalist. He was someone who saw her for who she truly was, someone who didn't want power, but the truth. And slowly, her heart began to open to him. A heart that had once been closed off to love, a heart that was now learning to trust again. Emily's new love story was quiet, a far cry from the glamorous public relationship she had once shared with Landon. There were no grand gestures or dramatic displays of affection. This love was built in the quiet moments, the moments when they shared their hopes, their scars, and their dreams. It wasn't about what the world could see. It was about what they had between them. A love that didn't need to be loud to be real. Their connection grew slowly over late-night conversations and shared silences. It wasn't flashy, but it was strong. In the quiet spaces, Emily found comfort. She had spent so long fighting for everything she had, but now she was learning to give her heart to someone who understood her, who respected her, and who loved her for everything she was. Broken pieces and all. This love wasn't about escaping the pain. It was about healing together in a world that had tried to tear them both apart. Pain had once been her burden, but now it was her strength. She took everything she had endured, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the public humiliation, and turned it into something that could help others. She donated millions to women's shelters, organizations that helped women escape from abusive relationships, and programs that gave them the tools to rebuild their lives. Her pain had been weaponized, not for revenge, but for change. She used her platform to raise awareness, to give a voice to those who had been silenced. The world watched as Emily transformed her trauma into power, using her own story to inspire others. She had been through hell, but now she was giving back, helping others avoid the traps that had once ensnared her. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about making a difference, about turning her suffering into something that could save lives. And with every life she touched, she grew stronger. 1 year had passed since everything changed. The betrayal, the courtroom battles, the rise from the ashes. And now, on the anniversary of her downfall and rise, Emily stood tall, a force to be reckoned with. She held hope in her arms, the little girl who had given her a reason to fight when everything seemed lost. Emily's new empire, the Hope Foundation, was thriving. The name that had once been a symbol of destruction was now a beacon of hope, a symbol of resilience and power. The world saw her now, not as the woman who had been broken, but as the woman who had rebuilt herself from the ground up. The skyline trembled beneath her heels as she walked into her future. Her head held high, the weight of her past no longer a burden but a reminder of her strength. She had done it. She had won, and the world would never forget the name Hope. Emily's voice echoed across the stage, clear and strong. "They tried to break me," she said, "but I gave birth to my strength." The room fell silent as those words rang out, powerful and defiant. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was a survivor. The world had watched her fall, and now they were watching her rise. Emily had proven that no matter how much life tried to break her, she would always come out stronger. Her strength was her voice, and she was going to make sure the world heard it. The camera pulled back, revealing the name etched in silver on the front of the towering building, Hope Foundation. It was a monument to everything Emily had fought for, a symbol of her journey, her survival, and her triumph over betrayal. The tower stood tall and unshakable, a reminder to the world that no one could ever tear down what she had built. Hope wasn't just her daughter's name. It was the legacy she had created, one that no one could touch no matter how hard they tried. And with that, Emily's redemption was complete. Dear friend, in life, there are moments when the world tries to break us, moments so raw and cruel that we wonder if we will ever stand again. But as the Stoics teach us, true strength is not found in avoiding hardship, it is forged within it. The obstacle is the way, Marcus Aurelius once wrote. And like Emily, when life scatters the pieces of who we are, it also offers us the chance to rebuild, stronger, wiser, and truer to ourselves than ever before. You are not defined by what tries to destroy you. You are defined by how you rise. So whatever you're facing today, hold on to hope. Breathe. Stand tall. And remember, you are stronger than you know, and your best chapters have yet to be written. Rise, rebuild, and shine. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring journeys. Your support helps us continue bringing powerful stories to life. Thank you for being part of our community.